Okay, welcome to the Wealth Flow. My guest today is Mark Doty. He has a lucrative sales career as a medical device salesperson and started his own business back in 2021. He utilizes the new regulations in San Diego to complete in-field development projects to help with California's housing crisis, while providing passive income for his investors. At home, he and his wife Erica stay active with their 3 young kids. We keep them busy with sports, swimming, outdoor activities on the weekends. So, Mark, I've been looking forward to this. Welcome to the Wealth Flow.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Keith. Been looking forward to this as well.
Yeah, and I'd like to start really with your background. Where you grew up, and what eventually led you to real estate investing.
Sure. So I'm in San Diego now, but that's not where I grew up. I grew up in central Illinois in a town called Bloomington Normal. That's where I went to high school. Ended up going to college at the University of Missouri, graduated there, and then I spent some time in Chicago immediately out of college. I spent 5 years kind of going through kind of crappy introductory level sales jobs. That's where I started, and then I worked my way up through various sales jobs to get to go from kind of like the bottom level sales to a little bit better, and eventually worked my way into a job in dental sales that turned into a job into medical device sales. And at that point, I thought that was like the tip of the spear. Best job you can get. Really had no entrepreneurial aspirations. I was just like, I'm gonna make a ton of money in my W-2 job, and medical device is the best job I can have. And I loved it for a long time. And I spent probably 15 or 17 years selling medical devices and making a really good income. But then the company that I worked for like a massive pharmaceutical company that owned the device section that I worked for. Well, they went through a lawsuit and a major organizational restructuring. So I got this great promotion into a job that was more like a low-level management type job, but it came with a huge pay cut. And I was like, I just wasn't able to like make ends meet after I had moved to San Diego for the same type of job. So with this pay cut, and I just felt like I didn't have any control over what I was doing anymore. I'd worked my whole career and going up and better jobs and sales awards and promotions. And then it just kind of got my legs cut out from under me. It was my perception of it. And so that was in probably 2018. And I'd already moved to San Diego. I'd already gotten married. I started having kids. So I had 3 relatively young kids at the time, and went through this restructuring, and I started like trying to figure out other ways that I could make money just like on the side at first. I did what everybody in real estate does. I read the Rich Dad Poor Dad. That kind of started all the thoughts around passive income and trying to do it on my own. And then I spent a bunch of time just researching different kinds of real estate strategies and markets and what could I get into, what made sense for me and my situation, and then what would work in San Diego, because like Southern California is not like a typical real estate market. But I wanted to do something that was closer to home rather than like somewhere back in the Midwest, like investing in Kansas City or Illinois or somewhere. That would have been a different set of metrics, but I just didn't feel comfortable getting into it and starting a team from California where I'd have to get on a flight and trust somebody with the boots on the ground, when I was really just trying to build it and learn how to do stuff on my own. So that was kind of a lot, but that's really where I got into it. I started doing a couple projects on the side while I was still working my medical device job. So I bought a duplex here in San Diego. I converted some of the space and turned it into a triplex. And I did this during COVID. So bunch of problems with contractors, hired the wrong people, had to rehire other people. But eventually, we got to the finish line, got to our appraisal on that property. We were trying to execute a BRRRR strategy, not by buying at a low cost, but by trying to improve the value of the property by so much. That was what we fell into in San Diego that would work, but got to the finish line on that project, got to our appraisal, got all of our capital back out of the project, and I had my proof of concept. I'm like, this is a model that is repeatable, that works in San Diego, that works with the amount of capital that I've got and the partnerships and just like my set of skills. I can scale this in San Diego. So I started with that. I did another project, and after I did that second project, I decided to walk away from the job. So I got my wife to tentatively agree to doing that with the 3 little kids, and I left that job in 2021, and so now 3 years later, I'm still at it, and it's going well.
Yeah, no, that's great. Tell me maybe, Mark, a little bit about that first one. You said you bought a duplex in a kind of a crazy time, right? Trying to go through, I can't remember that. When in 2001 did you buy it? And in other words, what part of the shutdown was all that in?
So this project did not go well. I didn't buy it in 2020. I bought it in 2019. We bought it from a distressed seller. So family that was going through divorce owned both sides of the duplex. They got out. We went through a pretty easy time getting the first 2 units rented and walling off the 3rd unit. But I had no idea like how long entitlement takes. So that's to go through the architectural plans, get your drawings completed, submitted to the city, approved, and then do all of your approvals with the inspectors as you're doing the project. All of that stuff was like a train wreck on the first one. It took way longer with the wrong team to do it. So that's why the first 2 units were pretty easy rehabs that went relatively well. But getting the 3rd unit from just a room addition into a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment just took way longer. And that's what made it stretch from the end of 2019 till the refinance that we did, which was in the very end of 2020. So I guess that was the after completely, but the tail end of 2020 is when I did this project.
Okay. And it was already a duplex, so the first 2, did you have the ability to start on those and do all that before having to go to the city and say, okay, here's what we're trying to do? And then when you say entitlement, you were looking at showing them, hey, I'm going to take this instead of a room addition. You want this to actually be a 3rd unit?
Yeah, correct. We wanted it legal so that it would appraise. So we were able to do 2 of the units and just wall off like what was a room addition. So it was like 900 square feet. We just put a wall in between the units. So we had the first 2 rented out and covering our holding costs. So we weren't getting killed we were covering our holding costs. So we weren't bleeding while we went through the entitled process. It was more like it just took longer than we anticipated.
Yeah, okay. And you did the refinance and you were able to pull out all of your initial investment, and then what did you find next? What was the next project that you did?
The next project was a similar idea. So around 2020, the city of San Diego changed a lot of the regulations and made it easier to do this kind of project. So I started in 19 when ADUs weren't as popular or as easy to do as they are today, or really after 2020. So after that, I bought the next project that I got was another single family house, a small house on a big flat lot. And on this one, we essentially did a flip, but the value add that we did wasn't with the existing structure. We added the entitlement of 3 units. So we did a shovel-ready project. We bought a house, left the tenants in place, drew up plans to build 3 more units, and then sold it to another developer. So really lucrative way to not do much construction and still get some pretty good returns off the project. That was the second one that I did.
Okay. And how long did that process take on that second one to get the entitlement?
So I learned a few things.
Yeah, and maybe even before we go there, you mentioned the regulation changes. Can you maybe talk a little bit about what changed within the law? And then you mentioned ADU, just for the audience, what is an ADU?
Sure. An ADU is an accessory dwelling unit, and that's a small apartment that you can add to almost any kind of residential lot. So when you're adding units and you're building stuff and developing, the zoning really matters in most places. And it takes a long time to get approvals to either to get the city to approve a zone change so that you can add more units. Except in some places on the West Coast, specifically Seattle, San Diego, California in general, you can add these units because they pass these regulations. They know that there's not room to do urban sprawl. There's really no more land where you can build new communities. So they've made it easier and faster to use the existing city infrastructure, the electrical, the sewage, the water, and connect additional units onto these bigger lots so that you can add density within the urban constraints. So in San Diego, what they did, well, in California in general, they said that you can add these to almost any residential lot. And then San Diego made it even easier to add more units if you're close to mass transit. So they're trying to get rid of the parking requirements. So if you can walk to a bus stop or walk to a trolley station, you can add even greater number of units onto lots that used to only have like a single family house. Now you can build, 4 units on almost every lot in San Diego. And then if you're really close to these other transit stops, the density is even greater.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it's a huge change. It makes sense, right? It does definitely tackles the affordable housing issue and just housing in general out there. And so on this last project, what you did, you basically got it entitled to say, hey, here are our plans. We're going to add, did you say 3 more units on that one?
Right. Yeah, so the idea is that the entitlement process is messy, and dealing with the city development office is also messy, but it's also time consuming. So it takes 9 months or a year to get these plans approved. So if you're a developer and you've got a crew and you're just trying to bang out more housing and just do the ground construction from day one, if you can present those guys with a stamped approved plan so that they can close escrow and then just start digging to build the foundations, it just speeds up their process and saves them money. So on that type of project, which isn't the project that I do every day, but it's a type of project that I do, I'm just the middleman to sell to another developer who's going to end up getting a little bit of probably a bigger payday, but they're also going to have to go through the whole construction process.
Right. Okay. Oh, that's very interesting. It's a strategy. Did you have a relationship with some, or pretty much you just put it on the market?
Just put it on the market. There's a lot of guys out there that want to do it. It's not a super widely known element, because most people that are looking for a house on the MLS, they're not going to want to do anything like that. But there's a small group of developers who see that and they're like, well, I'll pay the premium because those plans are already done and it's going to save me a year of holding costs.
Interesting. And so you did that one, and did you say after that one, did you leave your job?
Yeah, that's when I left my job at the tail end of that one. So I had my proof of concept. I had a couple that had gone well. I had a little bit of experience. The second one went way better than the previous one, than the first one that I had done. But it also made me realize that there were some gaps in my skill set that I needed to improve. So one of the guys that I was working with, not as a partner, but he was a contractor, was doing some of the engineering. He had his own construction team. He had a lot of the background and skill sets that caused me problems on my first project. And I was like, this guy is perfect to partner with. I can go in and do the capital raising component. I can be the sales guy, which is all my background in medical device. This guy's an engineer. He can do all the build after we get everything approved. From my perspective, it was like a perfect marriage. But we started that partnership. We ended up doing about 5 projects together over the next couple of years. But like 6 months into the first one, I realized that we were just not aligned. The skill sets were there, but we're doing these projects that take 2 years to get to the finish line, and 6 months into it, our values just weren't aligned. So we decided that we weren't going to continue throughout that, but I just quit my job. I got into this partnership. Lots of stress, lots of a new project, little kids, mouths to feed, big house in San Diego. So it's like I got all this stuff going on, and then the partnership that was kicking that off went bad like right away. So a lot of stress getting out of that. It ended up fine, but I didn't know that it was going to end up fine, and I had a lot of capital invested in the projects that we put together. So I guess I learned that I still like partnerships. I like partnering with people who have the skill sets that I don't have, and I also like the team element of it. I think it's way more fun to do these projects with somebody and like high fives and like commiseration at the same time. Like going through it with somebody, I think is more fun. But I also learned that I didn't need to do it so fast. I think I should have spent a lot more time making sure that we were aligned from a values perspective than I did. But at the same time, I still want to do other partnerships. I like going into it with partnerships. They have to be the right partner.
Yeah, makes sense. So you and that partner you said you total of what, 4 projects?
Five projects we did together.
Okay. And were they all along the same lines, where you were basically taking these single family homes and getting them entitled and then turning around and selling them, or were there any of them that you actually did do that?
We did the construction on that next set. They were all construction. So the first one that I did was just like kind of get the entitlements done, get some more experience getting plans approved with the city. The next 5 were all like doing the construction, getting space converted, turning a garage into a studio apartment, or building a 2-bedroom. They were smaller, like 1 and 2 unit construction additions, but it was the whole process of getting plans approved and then doing the construction and then doing the cash out refinance. By the time we got to the cash out refinance in this part of our partnership, I was like, I don't think we're going to be a good fit. So he was buying me out of those at the end of the projects, which ended up working fine. But instead of like the dream that we had together was like go into the sunset together. We're going to, do these big projects, do larger complexes. And yeah, it just didn't turn out that way.
Yeah. Which, the only way to know, I guess, for sure, I get it, it may have been some questions up front or some things that could have, it's hard until you get right in the middle of it, to really find out those things in advance. As much as it's nice to try to plan that. But when you were talking about cash out refinancing it, so is he still holding on to those, or or what was his exit strategy? Was he just going to use them as rentals? And
that's exactly that was our exit strategy going into it. It was to do a cash out refinance, recoup the capital, and then do it again. It was basically the Burr strategy. That was our plan. Put the capital in, do all the work, refinance, get the capital back, rinse and repeat. That was the plan. But that's not how it worked out. So the way that it worked out is like at the refinance, he was basically paying me out my portion of it, and then he's holding in as a rental. And we did a combination. Well, I still do some of the same strategy of holding on to them as short or medium term rentals, because I'm in this super expensive market where the rent ratios aren't the same as they are in other parts of the country. But if you can do short and medium term rentals through Airbnb or VRBO, you can usually like positive cash flow, even in markets even in coastal markets.
Okay. And in whether it be the first one or the ones after that, what are some of the things, Mark, that you learned when dealing with the city and make that entitlement process maybe smoother? What are, I guess, were there any lessons that were learned throughout the year?
The biggest thing that I learned on the first one, and the problem that I had, and the reason that it took so long, is that I didn't know that an architect is an architect, and Like, I thought they were all the same. I thought if you're an architect or an engineer and you design plans and you can do a room addition or, new bathrooms or whatever, then you can do all the entitlement stuff with the city too, because you're going through the same process. And that is not the case. There are special types of, maybe not special, I mean, they're common, but you have to deal with architects, engineers, designers that work specifically on the kind of project that you're doing. So I'm doing ADUs, and that's all I'm doing. I'm not doing room additions. I'm not doing the other parts that you would get approved by the city. I'm specifically doing ADUs, and I'm adding density, and those are different kinds of parts of the development code. And the guy that you're hiring or that I'm hiring has to be experienced in that realm. So I think that was a big lesson, and that is why I fell in love with my partner real early, because he knew the codes like to a T. He was awesome at it, and I was just like enamored with that part of it, because that was the part that gave me such problems on the project that took 2 years to get through. It was because I was hiring the wrong people and I didn't know who to go to, and I found this guy and I was like, he is perfect, until he wasn't.
Right. And so then from there, so tell me a little bit more about what you're doing now. Are you doing basically the same thing, that you're just you're doing it either with yourself or with another partner, or what does it look like now?
I'm doing a variety of that. So I started off, so he and I broke up. It was a slow breakup, but we're almost through. That partnership is almost, it's probably like 90% done. We've got one project that we're waiting to finish, and then we'll be done. And in the meantime, I've started doing projects on my own, and I'm trying to build a team in San Diego of other people who want to do these kind of projects. And I went from that partnership, and then I bought a house on my own, and I started my first syndication. So I bought a single family house on a big lot near these public transit, and I'm doing a ground up construction project where we're adding 27 units, so a mid-rise apartment on a lot that used to have like one single family home, and raising the capital to do that. And the plan for that will be to hold on to it for 3 to 5 years and then sell it. And then from a business perspective, I'm looking to do more on that, scale that type of business, get to the point where we can buy 15 properties in Southern California, do all of the value add, and then either refinance and hold them or sell. So I'm planning in the next 3 years is to buy, build, and improve $50 million in San Diego real estate, and I'm looking to grow a team that wants in on that kind of a project.
Yeah. So that's one that you're working on right now. How many units did you say?
So I bought it as a single family house, and the plans that are going through the entitlement process are to turn it into a 29 unit apartment complex. It's all ADUs, but it's like, for people who don't know what ADUs are, you wouldn't know the difference. You can't tell that it's an accessory dwelling unit. It's going to look like an apartment building. So it's 3 stories, high density. All the units are between 400 and 600 square feet. And it's a variety of 1 bedroom and 2 bedrooms. And it's right next to a bus station, so it kind of hits the transit priority element. And at the end of the day, San Diego is in a housing crisis. We're so short on housing right now. That's why you see the price point, and the median price point for a home, a single family home, is over $1 million right now in San Diego. And it's because we don't have anywhere to build. We're surrounded by the Pacific Ocean, Mexico. Camp Pendleton is this massive military base that's north of town. And then east is all deserts and mountains. So we passed all these regulations because we don't have anywhere to build new housing, and the city is supporting projects like this to add density to help with the cost of housing and the rental price. So the projects that I'm doing fall right in line with the new regulations that the city is passing.
Okay. And on this 29 unit that you're doing, once that gets entitled, are we going to look at it at that point and say, do I want to sell it to another investor, or are you actually going to do the construction on this one?
The plan is to actually do the ground up construction. So take it to the finish line.
Yeah. And so when you refinance out obviously on that one, and maybe you've done when you refinance on the others, now you're looking at a commercial product as far as a loan because you've got so many units, even though it started as a single family.
Right.
Yeah, that's cool. What about parking? You said it's close to the transit stations, and so that allows you to have a little bit more of a concentration on density, or a lot more of a concentration on density. Do you have to have individual parking spaces for each one of the units, or is that because of its locality?
So that's a great question, and that's it's not a gray area. It's a big question mark for projects in San Diego because they do not require parking. The assumption is that you're building it next to the transit stop to try to eliminate the parking requirements on projects like this one. It's in a neighborhood where there is street parking available, but part of the regulations that have passed have reduced the requirement to include parking. So on this one, we're not including parking. So we're depending on the public transit and the available street parking to make that work.
And from a projection standpoint, what are you anticipating the value of that to be?
So we bought it for about $600,000. We're putting probably $4.5 million into the entitlement and the ground up construction. And if the construction was done today, it would probably be worth $8.5 million. So a couple $1 million profit. And that's if it was finished today. The rental increases, and when you look at the NOI that's generated by the rental increases over the duration of this project, I mean, it's probably going to touch $9 million by the time we're actually done with it in 2 to 3 years from now.
Okay. And, obviously I'm in Texas, right? So I hear sometimes stories of California. From a rental standpoint, what does this look like with, once you refinance this, what are your projections?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a huge cash flow. After the refinance, the big pop at the end is going to be the sale at the end of the project. It's like a 4 to 7% cash on cash once it's been stabilized. So it's not in the San Diego marketplace, even on bigger units like this, most of the equity that you generate on the project is going to be, recouped when you sell or you hold on for a long time. I mean, in San Diego, it's not a huge cash on cash return type market, but you can make a huge ROI on the project. It's just in order to do that, you either have to hold it for a long time to wait for the appreciation to happen, or you have to sell. And on this one, I'm planning to sell once we've stabilized it.
Okay. So you'll refinance at some point in the middle of all that, and then look if the next step is being a sale, or when it's completed and rented out. I guess you're going to refinance once it's rented out.
Yeah, well, yeah. The process is going to be get our entitlements done, get the construction loan. The construction loan is going to have a high interest rate and it's going to have a short term. So it's like a hard money loan, more or less. And then once the construction's done, we're going to begin the lease up process and do a refinance so that we can decide. And we'll be able to decide. We could sell it at the end of construction, or we can lease up and then sell after it's been stabilized. That's kind of the flexibility that's built into the syndication.
Yeah. Okay. That's really neat. It's just a different ballgame altogether out there. I mean, it always has been with pricing. Whether you can even multifamily, out in California, it's not the same, type of investment as it is in some other places. But you guys have incredible appreciation and. I was in a syndication in San Antonio, and I was looking at a much larger cash on cash return, but not all that different return on the overall the IRR. So we were able to hit the same metrics at the end of the project,
It's just during the holding period, you're not making the monthly or quarterly distributions as much. It's more built into the end. And you can do a huge value add on a low cap rate project like this one. It's just you're not going to see the cash on cash return until the end, when you actually increased the value substantially.
Yeah. Okay. That's neat. And you and I have a mutual friend that's doing something similar, maybe different, with Alan. But what is? I mean, is this the hot investment right now in San Diego? I mean, from a competitive standpoint, is this what a lot of people are going after, or is it still kind of a little bit of a secret?
It's very hot. It's very hot. It's a lot less of a secret than it was several years ago. So like on the second project where I bought a house and I entitled the 3 other units and I sold it to another developer, it was still a secret then. The people that were selling that house really had no idea that it had that potential built into it. And now you'll look on the MLS and you'll see the agents and brokers describe the project like you can do all that stuff, and they'll add a little bit into the sales price with that assumption that you're going to be selling to a guy like me that knows it's worth more than a single family house just because of the zoning. So that it's harder and harder to find the unsophisticated seller who doesn't understand the ADU play, but it's still very lucrative. It's still the idea that we still have a housing shortage and this is a solution to that shortage, and it's supported by the city. It still makes it a very hot commodity, but more and more people are learning about it in today's environment than they were, say, 3 years ago.
Okay. And so what about off market? Have you started any kind of attempt for off market stuff that maybe they don't have that consultation with the agent where they're saying, hey, look, this is really hot right now?
Yeah, I mean there's some creative stuff that's starting in town where you can start direct mail campaigns where you're trying to partner with the homeowner and do some level of creative financing. I haven't done projects like that, but I'm networked in with a lot of agents and I've networked in with wholesalers. Those are my sources of off market. But really, I've found that it just making offers and trying to have like a human contact with the selling agent, I've found that to be effective. I'm not doing a huge volume of deals. I'm looking more to do large profitability and bigger project, like a smaller number of project, but more projects. And with the size of my current team, it's like I don't need to have the huge marketing machine to find deals. I just have to be persistent, find a project and start working it. And that fits with where I am today. In the future, direct mail or some other kind of marketing campaign, I've thought through but haven't started.
Okay. And with I guess these projects, like you got the 28 units or 29 units or whatever this one is. Are you using is the city giving some kind of guidance as far as a formula that says, hey, look, if you've got this amount of space and you're close to the public transit, you can do this, or do they give you that guidance on maybe the first level and then you just need to go up from there? Or in other words, how do you know long term that you're going to get the approval on the 29 units, or do they give you enough guidance?
They honestly don't give you a ton of guidance. There is some that they'll give you, but that goes back to my original thing of what I learned on my first project was that I didn't really understand those regulations, and it directed me to start working with architects and engineering, a design team that knows those regulations and has been through that process. And I have a baseline of what they'll allow. but I work with people who really know the ins and outs of it. So I know what to look for in terms of purchasing a project and like what kind of zoning I like and the size of the lot in the area. But then I leave it more like the experts on the team to figure out the exact unit counts.
Okay, yeah, that's really cool. It's an interesting deal, and I mean it's definitely a needed avenue out there to be able to expand. So, tell me a little bit more about your vision, Mark.
So what I'm doing is building up a team. So I'm ramping up to be able to buy $15 to $20 million in San Diego real estate, and then spend another $10,000 to $15,000 on improving and building more units, all in the county. But I'm looking to build up a team that's going to be able to buy those properties over the next 3 to 5 years, do the improvements, and then either hold on to them or sell at the end of the day. So I'm in the early stage of building that team, but that's the process over the next 3 to 5 years is buy and improve $50 million of San Diego real estate based on the ADU play, and then maybe like other small multifamily here in town. That's the vision.
And is the ADU opportunity available all over California? I know obviously you're focused in your backyard in San Diego, but I would imagine once you kind of got the blueprint and the kind of the business plan, other areas that become hot, you can just continue to take it to those other areas.
Yeah, that's true. Like I know the regulations really well inside the city limits, and so if we back up a little bit, the state of California passed the regulations to allow the ADUs on most of these lots. The state has issued the regulations, and then the municipality sets how those regulations are going to be implemented. So it's a little different in LA than it is in San Diego, and it's a little different in Escondido, which is like a suburb of San Diego, than it is inside the city limits. But the state allows a certain level of it, but you can expand out and learn the different codes within those different cities. But the state is pressing to help with the housing shortage by doing ADUs. So it's allowed throughout the state. It's just a little different. It's allowed in other states across the West Coast also. It's just a little different in Seattle or in Washington than it is in California. But it's changing, and it's growing throughout the country.
I don't know if it's across all of Austin, but it's been something that I've seen people doing there as well. So it's neat. It's cool. It's always neat when there's these opportunities, and you're getting in kind of at the ground level, and that's just going to be amazing. So I'm looking forward to watching your journey and seeing how it goes. Tell Mark, if you could, the audience, how they can find out more about you, if they'd like to invest with you, if they'd like to see some of the stuff that you're doing. How can they reach?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on social media, so I've got stuff on YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn are all places where you can find me. Mark Doty or Doty Capital. DotyCapitalGroup.com is my website. You can schedule a call through there. You can see any of our pitch decks that are listed. And yeah, we're looking for investors who like the idea of what I'm talking about of doing infill development, in one of the coolest markets in the country.
Well, this has been awesome, Mark. I've appreciated it and really enjoyed hearing about the ADUs. And if we could, I've got 2 more questions for you that I ask every guest.
Sure.
The first one is, any advice you might give somebody who's maybe just starting out in their investment journey?
I've gotten a ton of value out of mentorship. I started off my journey going to Bigger Pockets and hearing and being afraid of getting roped in by a scam guru. So in the early part of my investing career, I was very turned off by joining a group. But then I kind of reached a threshold of I didn't know a lot of people who were doing what I was doing. And as I joined a couple of mentorship programs, a mentorship or even a mastermind groups, I've gotten a lot of value in just being in the same rooms with other people who are at the next stage where I could ask them questions and just find out what they were doing. So I went through the phase where I was watching everything online and Bigger Pockets and podcasts. But once you start hearing the same messages over and over again, I think you kind of need to graduate into a different level of education. And I think that comes with networking.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. How about book recommendation? It doesn't have to be real estate related, but it certainly can be. Just something that you've read that's been impactful.
So right now I'm in a big scaling mode, and I'm reading Who Not How, and I'm reading 10x is easier than 2x. I've got that sitting on my desk. That's next. And I'm reading Dan Martell's book. So I'm reading a lot about trying not to be the do-it-yourselfer and try to grow into the owner's box. And there are some stages in between those two. Those are a few books that are helping me in that part of my journey.